Welcome to season 2 of Life's Timing. I'm very excited to be given this opportunity to continue having a podcast, and thank you for listening. So, this season, I've been thinking of how I want to go about our episodes and everything, and I would love to hear from you. Today's topic, for example, I want to make it Life's Timing, not just about the things that happen in our life's goals and plans and how things end up working out, but also why we're here in this planet right now as a population, right? As everyone here. What's our purpose here together? So this first episode, I wanted to call it, but I don't know if this is like the best title, but I wanted to make it be what's wrong in the world right now. And obviously that's a huge question. And I was trying to relate it back to the reason why I created this podcast to begin with and why I called it Life's Timing. And then it made sense because what's wrong with our world right now, and I thought about what it is, it has to do with our timing here in life right now. And like I said before, why we're here. So welcome to season 2, episode 1, what's wrong with the world right now? So to answer that question, I'm going to give you my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion. There's no truth to this whatsoever. But if you agree or disagree, I welcome it. And I believe that what's wrong with our world today is our collective consciousness, is the level where we're at. So this word consciousness, is very popular and used frequently. And for many, many years, I didn't really understand what consciousness means. And I feel that it's one of those words that has an interpretation depending on who's saying it, right? Everyone has their own definition of what it is. So I'm going to give you my definition of what I think when I think of the word collective consciousness, what I mean. So what I mean by collective consciousness is the energetic vibration that we are operating as a world population. And if you take a look around at what's happening in our world right now, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're operating at a high vibrational frequency. So you see a lot of this, right? And so the way that you know what's happening in our world, how we're operating as a collective consciousness, just take a look at what's happening in our world. There's war, there's hate, there's killings, there's just a lot of things that are happening that is contributing to the propensity of continuing the collective consciousness that we're at. So I would like to suggest and propose, if everyone can be on board to understand that we are a collective consciousness, we are all connected to each other through energy, whether or not you want to believe it. It is science, it is spiritual, it is whatever you want it to be, but it exists. The invisible exists. And if you don't believe that the invisible exists, look at the internet, right? Wi-Fi is invisible, but it exists. Sending an email, placing a phone call, it's all through invisible energy and I don't know the logistics of that, so don't ask me, but it's invisible. I don't see how it happens. So I would like to propose that we all make a very conscious effort to raise our collective consciousness. And once we do that, our actions and what we see in the world will look and feel better to us too. Everything that's happening that is affecting us right now, between war, between deaths, between hate speech, between freedom of speech, and a lot of the things that are right now boiling here, especially in the United States and in Gaza and other places around the world, it all came from humans. It all started from something that took place that humans did. Now, there's only 2 actions in this world that humans can take. It's either conversation or it's physical action. Most of what we do that creates futures is conversational. Our words create futures. And I find it crazy that we never learned how to have formal conversations or proper conversations or how to use our words formally in school. I feel like the only time we actually learned that was maybe in kindergarten when they said, use your words, be kind, be respectful. And throughout the years after that and in between, unless you had someone guiding you, if your family was, if people in your family were good speakers, were good communicators, then great. But what if your family was not, they didn't have a background of being good communicators? Where were you going to learn that? I think one of my favorite classes was in the university when I took a business and professional communication course. And for me, that was so eye-opening. And it made me understand how important our words are and how to persuade, how to close, how to open, how to create just through using our words. So I want to focus on that. I really think that we underestimate the power of our words. When we don't know how to communicate and how to have open dialogue and how to hear someone else, which is part of having a conversation, it creates something else and manifests into something else. And it can turn into physical action. Our physical action that happens from conversation is violence. And we have progressed, I feel, as a collective consciousness throughout thousands of years, where we are no longer beheading people. We're no longer doing public executions. We're not having duels that result in gunfights or sword fights or, all the things we have seen in the past. I didn't live those times. I just read history and that's what it looked like. But you never know. Times could have been better back then than they are now. But I think today we've become better when it comes to that. And there's a little bit more respect for life. And we have evolved in that sense. So that's good. But we have to remember that our words are the primary action that needs to take place to create worlds, to create futures that we want for our children, for us, for humanity, and to create cities, towns, communities, religions. Everything, politics, governments, everything that exists in this world under our power is a result of the words and the conversations that took place. So I'd like to just start off with, how do you lead a conversation respectfully? And I think it's easier said than done, but it's not impossible. So I want to keep this podcast somewhat practical. I didn't want it to just be my opinion piece, although I was very reluctant to sharing my opinion, especially after, the assassination of Charlie Kirk and what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in a lot of, in the state of the world right now. But I felt that if I didn't share this and provide a practical approach to how we can help this, then I'd be doing a disservice and I'd be just staying silent. And silence leads to violence. So I want to speak. I want to use my words and I want to help humanity in the best way possible and avoid violence. So here's what happens. Our words are based off of our emotions, and our emotions are based off of our thoughts. So whatever you're thinking is what's causing you to feel a certain way. And based on how you feel are the words that you use. One of the things that I constantly preach is never speak when you're angry. Because when you're angry, nothing is going to work out in words the way that you want it to be. You're going to say something that you regret and then later want to go back on it, or you stay with that energy, someone else, because if it's a conversation, someone else is going to get back at you with that same anger. And the next thing that happens in your day is going to lead to more anger, and everything else that's going to happen in your day until you feel better is going to make you more angry. So if you know that your words stem from your emotions and your emotions stem from your thoughts, we need to work on what are the thoughts that we are having to lead us into these conversations. And I want to propose for us to take a minute to examine the thoughts we're having in our head. We have obviously a million thoughts a second. There's a lot of things going on in our head when we are, we don't have time to analyze every single thought before we speak. But when you're not speaking and there's not much going on with you having to have a conversation, you can take a moment to just reflect on some of the thoughts in your mind. And more importantly, when you are not sure if your words are coming out right, just look at how you've been feeling. I notice when I scroll down social media, I can tell who's angry and who's not, right? I don't know them. I'm not seeing them. I'm not hearing them with my ears, but I'm reading what they're writing. And when you read what they're writing, it stems from anger. It stems from an emotion that is not feeling good to them. And none of that leads to any positive change. None of that contributes to humanity. You have to be very careful with how you use your words when you're in a state of anger or frustration, because the intentions that you have are not always good. They're not going to be great. So when the good thing about anger, if you looked at a vibrational, energetic, and an emotional frequency chart, anger is one of the closest vibrations from low frequency to high frequency, the highest, lowest ones before you go into positive frequencies. So after anger comes courage, right? Have you noticed when someone gets angry and they speak out, it's an act of courage for them to a certain extent, an act of pride to speak out and voice their concerns. And that's where you see protests, right? And those are signs of courage and signs of pride, which can then lead to something positive. But you have to be extremely consciously aware of where you're letting that anger fuel and where it's taking you. So I really think that if we just took a moment in time to analyze our emotions and how you feel right now, before you put words on paper, on social media, or in conversation, you can come back to what are the thoughts you're having. And your thoughts are filled with a lot of different things. But one of the biggest ones are the stories and the values that are in your ether. After the assassination of Charlie Kirk, there was a lot of emotions that stirred up for many people. But one of the things that was most fascinating about that situation was how people were drawn to the one thing that they valued most or were drawn to most. So some people became drawn to family and going into the foundations of a family. Other people were drawn to politics because maybe that's what they were drawn to and what they valued more. Other people were drawn to religion. Other people were drawn to gun control. Other people were drawn to freedom of speech. Other people were drawn to open dialogue, tolerance, lots of different things. And I can tell you for me, what that did for me was what's in my ether, what's in my forefront, what's in my consciousness continuously is being able to coexist in this planet amongst our differences and being able to use our words. So of course, what stuck out for me in the Charlie Kirk assassination was this inability or lack of tolerance for open dialogue and to be able to coexist amongst our differences. And what makes living in America particularly so attractive for people from all over the world is the idea that we can share our opinions on anything without getting killed or going to jail. It's the reason why my family moved from Cuba. It was to run away from the communist regime. And in that time, if you said anything against the government, you would go to jail or you would get killed. And can you imagine living in a world like that? And after this happened with Charlie Kirk, I noticed, or I felt in my heart, this was going towards a lack of tolerance and people feeling the need to voice their opinion, but not knowing how to express it. And what happens when you express yourself, but there's too many attachments in that delivery, basically it's like a clouding what you're trying to say. People will take it in the way that they interpret your message and whatever values and matters to them. And that's what creates the conflict. So it's okay to voice your opinion. But I think the way that you deliver that message and just a couple of practical tips that we can use in communicating our voice, which must be heard. I am promoting being able to use your voice and being able to share your opinion. But there's a way to do it so that what you're trying to say is very, very clear to avoid conflict and to avoid fear and to avoid violence. And one easy thing you can do is focus on what you want. What do you want your future to look like? What would you like to see? I saw a quote recently from a monk that said, if you blame others, something, I'm not going to quote it exactly because I don't remember it word for word, but it says something like, if you blame others, you're not wise. If you blame yourself, you're a little wiser. But if you blame no one, you made it. I think right now we need to remember that more than anything. Is this voicing your opinion is not about blame. It's about sharing what you want your future to look like for you, for your family, for humanity. If you start off your voice, your opinion by blaming someone else, you immediately get opposition. And perhaps you're looking for acceptance and you're looking for people to jump with you on a team, which I think is an issue because there doesn't have to be a team for you to have a voice. You are strong enough and powerful enough to have your own voice. There is, of course, more power in collective voices, right? This is why people come together to protest. This is why people come together to form parties and groups and organizations. But the message always has to be clear. Focus on what you want. Do not blame someone else or another party. Take responsibility, if this is relevant in what you're trying to say, for your actions. You cannot control what someone else does, but you can control what you do. And if you're not ready to do that in dialogue, whether it's having a conversation with someone face to face, over the phone, in written form, or on social media, take a moment to pause and reflect and formulate your thoughts to understand that everyone here at a very fundamental level wants to live and wants to enjoy their life. But everyone has a different value. And let's say there's 5 values that you feel everyone in the world shares, or let's just say 3. The order of those values are different for every single person, and the prioritization of those values are different. So if you come to someone with your value and that person is coming at you with another value that's not your value, does that mean that they are wrong because they don't prioritize your value as number 1? They might prioritize it as number 2, but they want to share with you their number 1 value. No, it's just how people feel. It's what's speaking to them. It's what's in their heart. It's what's in their world. Everyone is suffering a different experience. Everyone has a suffering that stems from a different experience than yours. And if you understand that, you'll have some empathy and some compassion. If you remember that as a thought, the emotion that you'll have is one of empathy and compassion. And the words that follow after that will be totally different, guaranteed, than the words stemming from opposition, from picking a side, from blaming others, and trying to justify your actions. There is no justification for words full of hate and trying to divide, because we're all here for the same purpose. So as long as we keep open communication, as long as we keep healthy dialogue, once again, this is my opinion, this is my value, we can raise our collective consciousness and start seeing more beautiful things in the world happen. And I invite you too, there are beautiful things happening in this world right now. It's not all bad, but I think that's where the focus is right now. And so if we can focus it on the good that's happening in this world, that'll also help as a thought that leads to a better feeling emotion to then lead to better words. So try those 2 things, those 2 thought processes before you go out into the world and share your amazing, beautiful voice and value and opinion. And make sure that your intention before you say anything, ask yourself, why? Why am I sharing this? What is it for? Is it to gain popularity? Is it to gain agreement? Is it to feel heard? Is it to make a change? And see what that answer is. And ask yourself, is this going to contribute to the collective consciousness? Is this going to contribute to my well-being and well-being of others? And if it is, go for it. But if you know in your heart it's just a rant or it's not going to be of any benefit, keep it to yourself. So there is another phrase before I end this episode that I heard, and I felt, wow, this is very profound. And it's silence or violence. If we don't keep the conversations going, they will lead to the inevitable violence. So please raise your voice. Be very careful with the words that you use, focusing on what you want, focusing on the future you'd like to see. coming from a feeling of compassion and empathy before you share, understanding everyone has their own suffering that they have, their own values, their own way of seeing the world that's different from yours. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. And we can have a better situation happening and better living experience. So thank you. I know this one was a little serious, but I'll be happy to answer any specific questions, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.